It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Maple Grove. This was a quiet little neighborhood where houses sat close together, and green lawns stretched out in front of them. Everyone here knew each other, or at least, that's what they thought. Kids played outside, dogs ran around, and neighbors waved hello. It felt like a happy place most of the time. But today was about to get interesting. Jake Miller lived in a small house on the corner. He was a regular guy with messy brown hair and a big smile. He didn't talk much, but he was nice to everyone. In his yard, he had a furry friend named Max. Max was a huge German shepherd with floppy ears and a wagging tail. That dog loved to bark. He barked at squirrels scampering up trees. He barked at birds flying in the sky. He even barked at leaves blowing across the grass. Most people in Maple Grove didn't care. They'd laugh and say, "Oh, that's just Max being Max." But one person didn't laugh. One person hated it. And her name was Karen. Karen wasn't like the other neighbors. She didn't wave or smile. She walked around with her head held high, like she was the boss of everything. Karen was the leader of the HOA, the Homeowners Association. That's a fancy name for a group that makes rules about how the neighborhood should look and act. Karen loved rules. She carried a clipboard everywhere she went, and she'd write down anything she didn't like. A bush too tall? She'd write it down. A bike left in a driveway? She'd write that down too. To her, Maple Grove was her kingdom, and she was the queen. Everyone had to follow her orders or else. And then there was Jake. Poor Jake. Karen decided he was her biggest problem. Why? Because of Max and his barking. Every time that dog let out a woof, Karen's eyes would narrow. She'd march over to Jake's house, her shoes clicking on the sidewalk, and she'd start complaining. "Your dog is too loud," she'd say. "He's ruining our perfect neighborhood." Jake would just nod and toss Max a ball, trying to stay calm. But inside, he was tired of it. Tired of her yelling. Tired of her rules. That sunny afternoon, Jake was out in his front yard. The grass was soft under his feet, and the sun felt warm on his face. Max was running around, chasing a little red ball Jake had thrown. The dog's barks echoed through the air loud and happy. Jake chuckled as Max jumped high to catch the ball in his mouth. "Good boy," he said, scratching Max behind the ears. It was just another day for them. But across the street, Karen was watching. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, her clipboard tucked under one elbow. Her lips were pressed tight, and her eyes were locked on Jake and Max. She didn't like what she saw. Not one bit. To her, that barking wasn't just noise, it was trouble. It was breaking her rules. And Karen didn't let anyone break her rules. Another day, another complaint, Jake mumbled to himself. He could feel Karen staring at him, like a hawk watching a mouse. He tossed the ball again, and Max barked even louder, racing after it with his tongue hanging out. Jake shook his head and smiled a little. He wasn't worried. Not today. Because something was different. Something Karen didn't know about. Something nobody in Maple Grove knew about. See, Jake wasn't just a regular guy with a loud dog. Oh no. There was a secret hiding in that small house on the corner. A big secret. A secret so surprising it could flip Karen's perfect little world upside down. She thought she had everything under control. She thought she knew who Jake was, just some lazy guy with a noisy pet. But she was wrong. Very wrong. Max wasn't just any dog. And Jake? He wasn't just any neighbor. There was something special going on, something exciting. It was like a storm brewing quietly in the sky, waiting to burst. Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought she could boss Jake around forever. She thought she could call the shots. But soon, very soon, she'd find out the truth. And when she did, her clipboard wouldn't help her one bit. Jake glanced over at Karen, still standing there with her grumpy face. He waved, just to be polite, but she didn't wave back. She turned and stomped inside her house, probably to write another note about Max. Jake shrugged and kept playing with his dog. He wasn't scared of Karen. Not anymore. Because he had a plan. A big one. And it was already starting. So, here's a question for you: what do you think Jake's hiding? Is it something about Max? Is it something about him? Maybe it's both. I'm not telling you yet, you've got to stick around to find out. This story's just getting started, and trust me, it's going to get wild. Imagine Karen's face when she learns the truth. Picture her clipboard falling to the ground. It's coming, friends. Something big. Something awesome. Let's think about Maple Grove for a second. It looked so calm that day. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and kids were riding bikes down the street. Everything seemed normal. But under all that normal stuff, something amazing was waiting to pop out. Jake knew it. Max knew it too, in his own doggy way. But Karen? She was clueless. She thought she was the smartest person around. She thought she could keep picking on Jake forever. Boy, was she in for a surprise. Jake tossed the ball one more time, and Max barked again, a big, happy woof, that bounced off the houses. Karen's front door flew open, and she poked her head out, glaring. "Keep that dog quiet," she shouted. Jake just smiled. "Sure thing, Karen," he called back, but his voice had a little spark in it. A spark that said, "You'll see soon enough." The afternoon rolled on, slow and easy. The neighborhood stayed quiet, well, except for Max's barking. Jake didn't mind. He loved his dog, and he loved their little life together. But he also knew things were about to change. Big things. Things that would make everyone in Maple Grove talk for weeks. Maybe even months. What was Jake's secret? Was Max more than just a goofy pup? Was there something special about that little house on the corner? You're probably guessing right now, aren't you? Good. Keep guessing. Because the answers are coming, and they're going to be so much fun. Karen thought she was in charge, but she was about to learn she didn't know everything. Not even close. Karen was like a hawk circling Jake's house. She watched everything he did, especially when Max was around. Max was Jake's big, furry German shepherd, and he loved to bark. Every time Max let out a loud woof, Karen's lips would squeeze together tight, like she'd just eaten a sour lemon. She'd grab her clipboard, that thing she carried everywhere, and scribble something down fast. She wrote notes about Max barking, about Jake's messy yard, about anything she didn't like. To Karen, Max wasn't just a dog. He was a problem. And she was done with problems. That day, the sun was high in the sky, and Max was having the best time ever. A little gray squirrel darted across Jake's lawn, its tiny feet scampering over the grass. Max saw it and went wild. "Woof! Woof! Woof!" he barked, chasing after that squirrel like it was the most exciting game in the world. His big paws thumped the ground, and his tail wagged so hard it looked like it might fall off. Jake stood on his porch, watching with a grin. He thought Max was funny. But Karen? She didn't think it was funny at all. She'd been peeking out her window, her eyes sharp and mean. When Max started barking, it was like a switch flipped in her head. She'd had enough. More than enough. She grabbed her phone off her kitchen table and marched outside. Her shoes clicked loud on the sidewalk, like little hammers banging with every step. She crossed the street fast, her face getting redder and redder. By the time she got to Jake's yard, she was mad, really mad. "Jake Miller," she yelled. Her voice was so loud it made the birds in the trees fly away, flapping their wings in a panic. She stood there, hands on her hips, her phone clutched tight in one fist. "That dog is a menace," she shouted. "He's too loud. He's driving everyone crazy. I'm calling 911 right now if you don't shut him up." Max didn't care. He kept barking at the squirrel, who was now safe up a tree, chattering back at him. Jake didn't move. He just leaned against the porch railing, his arms crossed over his chest. A tiny smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't a big smile, just a little one, like he knew something funny was about to happen. "Go ahead, Karen," he said, his voice calm and easy. "Call M. See what happens." Karen's eyes got wide. She couldn't believe it. Jake wasn't scared. He wasn't yelling back. He was just standing there, acting like he didn't care. That made her even madder. She puffed out her chest and huffed, her breath coming out loud and fast. "Oh, you think you're so clever, don't you?" she snapped. Her face was turning redder than a tomato now. "You're just some lazy guy with a mutt, ruining our neighborhood. Well, I've had it. I'm done with you and that noisy dog." She held up her phone and started pressing buttons. She glared at Jake the whole time, her eyes shooting sparks. She wanted him to know she meant business. To her, Max was the worst thing in Maple Grove. And Jake? He was just as bad for letting Max bark all the time. She thought she was in charge. She thought she could scare Jake into doing what she wanted. She dialed 911, holding the phone to her ear, still staring at him like he'd just kicked her favorite flowers. "You'll see," she said, her voice sharp. "The police will come, and they'll make you get rid of that dog. This is a nice neighborhood, and we don't need trouble like you." She turned away a little, talking into the phone. "Yes, hello. I need help. There's a dog here barking nonstop, and the owner won't do anything about it." Jake didn't say a word. He didn't jump up or run over to stop her. He just stayed where he was, leaning on the porch. Max barked again, loud and happy, still looking up at that squirrel. Jake's little smirk grew just a tiny bit bigger. He wasn't worried. Not one bit. Why? Because he knew something Karen didn't. Something big. Something that was going to change everything. Karen kept talking on the phone, her voice getting louder. "Yes, it's an emergency," she said. "That dog is a danger. You need to send someone right now." She hung up and turned back to Jake, pointing at him with one finger. "You're in trouble now, Jake Miller. The police are coming, and they'll fix this. You can't ignore me anymore." Jake tilted his head a little, like he was thinking about something funny. "Okay, Karen," he said. "Let's wait and see." His voice was still calm, like he was talking about the weather. He didn't look mad or scared. He looked ready. Ready for whatever was coming next. Karen stood there, her arms crossed now, her phone still in her hand. She tapped her foot on the ground, waiting. She thought she'd won. She thought the police would show up, take Max away, and make Jake sorry he ever moved to Maple Grove. She thought she was the boss, like always. But she didn't know the truth. She didn't know what Jake was hiding. The air felt thick, like something big was about to happen. Max kept barking, running back and forth across the lawn. The squirrel stayed up in the tree, safe and sound. Neighbors peeked out their windows, wondering what all the yelling was about. They saw Karen standing there, looking angry. They saw Jake on his porch, looking calm. And they wondered, what was going on? Karen didn't back down. She kept staring at Jake, waiting for him to give up. She thought he'd say sorry or try to quiet Max. But he didn't. He just watched her, that little smirk still on his face. It was driving her crazy. Why wasn't he scared? Why wasn't he begging her to stop? What was he up to? She didn't have a clue. She thought Jake was just a guy with a loud dog. She thought he was nobody special. But she was wrong. There was something about Jake, something about Max, too, that she didn't understand. And soon, she'd find out. Soon, she'd wish she'd stayed inside her house and left Jake alone. The tension was building, like a balloon getting bigger and bigger. Karen thought she was in control. She thought she could boss everyone around, like she always did. But Jake? He wasn't playing her game. He had something up his sleeve, something she'd never guess. And when it came out, her perfect little kingdom was going to shake. The clock kept ticking, slow and steady. Karen stood in Jake's yard, her arms crossed tight, her foot tapping the grass like a drum. She was waiting for the police to roll up and teach Jake a lesson. She was sure she'd won this time. Max, Jake's big German shepherd, didn't care about Karen's grumpy face. He kept barking, loud and happy, running circles around the yard. His paws kicked up little bits of dirt as he chased a ball Jake had thrown earlier. Jake didn't try to stop him. He didn't yell or grab Max's collar. He just stood there on his porch, arms crossed, watching everything. His eyes moved from Max to Karen, then back again. He was quiet, but he was listening. Listening hard. Karen huffed and puffed, her face still red from all her yelling. She thought the police would be there any second. She could almost hear the sirens in her head already. "You're in big trouble now, Jake," she muttered under her breath. She tapped her foot faster, her shoe making a little thump-thump sound on the ground. She was so sure she was right. So sure Jake was just a lazy guy with a noisy dog. She didn't think anything could stop her. But then something happened. A car rolled up to Jake's house. It wasn't a police car with flashing lights and loud sirens. No, this was different. It was a shiny black SUV, sleek and fancy, with dark windows you couldn't see through. It stopped right in front of Jake's yard, and the engine turned off. Karen's head snapped around to look at it. Her eyes got small and squinted, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. Two people stepped out of the car. They weren't regular neighbors or friends. They wore sharp uniforms, dark blue jackets and pants that looked crisp and clean. They carried big bags over their shoulders, and the bags made a clinking sound, like metal stuff was inside. Karen's mouth twisted up. "Who are they?" she barked, her voice loud and sharp. She pointed at the strangers with one finger, like they just walked onto her lawn without asking. She didn't like surprises. She didn't like anything she couldn't control. Jake didn't move from his spot on the porch. He shrugged his shoulders, nice and easy, like it was no big deal. "Trainers," he said, his voice calm. He bent down, picked up Max's red ball, and tossed it across the yard. Max barked once and ran after it, his tail wagging like crazy. "For Max," Jake added, looking back at Karen with that little smirk still on his face. Karen blinked. "Trainers," she said, her voice full of sass. She laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was mean and loud. "What kind of trainers? That dog's a lost cause. He's too wild. He'll never learn anything." She shook her head, her clipboard still tucked under her arm. She thought Max was just a big, dumb dog who barked too much. She thought Jake was wasting his time. She didn't believe trainers could do anything about it. But then one of the strangers did something amazing. The man, he had short black hair and a serious face, knelt down in the grass. He looked at Max, who was still running around with the ball in his mouth. The man didn't yell or wave his arms. He just said one word, quick and clear: "Sit." And guess what? Max stopped. Right there, in the middle of the yard, he dropped the ball and plopped his furry butt on the ground. His big tongue hung out, and his tail wagged back and forth, but he didn't bark. Not once. He looked up at the man, waiting, like he was proud of himself. Karen's jaw dropped. Her mouth hung open so wide you could see her teeth. She couldn't believe it. Max, wild, noisy Max, was sitting still, quiet as a mouse. The other stranger, a woman with a ponytail, smiled a little and nodded at the man. They didn't say much, but they looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. Jake watched it all, his grin getting bigger. He didn't say anything yet. He just let Karen stare. She shook her head fast, like she was waking up from a dream. "This doesn't change anything," she snapped, her voice loud again. She pointed at Jake, then at Max, then at the trainers. "I don't care if he sits. He's still too loud. I still called the cops, and they're coming. You're not getting out of this." She clutched her phone tight, like it was her shield. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. She thought the police would still take her side. She thought she was still the boss. Jake leaned back against the porch railing, his hands in his pockets now. "Good," he said, his voice smooth and sure. "They'll be here soon." He paused for a second, then looked right at Karen. "And trust me, Karen, you're gonna love this." His eyes sparkled, like he was holding onto the best secret ever. He wasn't scared of the cops. He wasn't scared of Karen. He was excited. Karen frowned. She didn't like that look on Jake's face. She didn't like how calm he was. It made her stomach feel funny, like something was wrong, but she didn't know what. "What are you talking about?" she grumbled, but Jake didn't answer. He just kept grinning, watching her squirm. The trainers stayed quiet too. The man pulled something out of his bag, a little whistle, and blew it. It didn't make a sound Karen could hear, but Max's ears perked up. He ran over to the man and sat again, looking happy as ever. The woman started unpacking her bag, pulling out ropes and toys and weird stuff Karen didn't understand. They weren't just playing with Max. They were teaching him something. Something important. Karen tapped her foot again, faster now. "What's going on?" she muttered to herself. She didn't get it. Why were these trainers here? Why was Max listening to them? And why was Jake so happy about the police coming? It didn't make sense. She thought she had everything figured out, but now she wasn't so sure. The neighborhood was buzzing now. Kids on bikes slowed down to watch. Neighbors peeked out their doors, whispering to each other. They saw the black SUV. They saw the trainers. They saw Karen standing there, looking mad and confused. And they saw Jake, cool as could be, like he was waiting for a big show to start. Something was building up. Something big. Karen thought she was winning, but little bits of the truth were starting to peek out. Max wasn't just a loud dog. The trainers weren't just random people. And Jake? He wasn't just a guy who didn't care. He had a plan. A secret. And it was getting closer to coming out. What do you think's coming next? Any guesses? Was Max special? Were the trainers part of something cool? And why was Jake so sure the police wouldn't be mad? The answers were almost here, and Karen was about to get a big surprise. She thought she knew everything, but she didn't know anything yet. Stick around, this is getting good. The police siren started far away, a little wail that grew louder and louder. Karen heard it, and her lips curled into a big, mean smirk. She thought she'd won. She thought the cops were coming to take Jake and Max away. She stood there in Jake's yard, her arms crossed, her foot still tapping the grass. She was sure this was her big moment. She'd called 911, and now Jake would finally get in trouble. She could almost see it, Max gone, Jake quiet, and her rules back in charge. She looked at Jake, expecting him to look scared or mad. But he didn't. He just stood on his porch, calm as ever, watching. The police car rolled up, its lights flashing red and blue. It stopped right in front of Jake's house, and the siren turned off. A tall officer stepped out. He wore a dark uniform with a shiny badge on his chest. Karen's smirk got bigger. Here we go, she whispered to herself. She waited for the officer to march over to Jake, maybe even pull out handcuffs. But that's not what happened. The officer didn't even look at Jake, not at first. Instead, he walked straight past Karen, right to the two trainers standing by their black SUV. He stuck out his hand and shook theirs, like they were old friends. Karen blinked. Her smirk started to slip. What was going on? The officer smiled at the trainers, then turned to Jake. He gave a little nod, like they shared a secret. All set, Miller, he asked, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Jake nodded back. All set, he said. His voice was calm but strong, like he wasn't worried about a thing. He stepped off the porch now, his sneakers crunching on the gravel path. He stood tall, looking right at the officer, then at Karen. Karen's mouth opened a little. Wait, what's going on? She said, her voice getting high and squeaky. She pointed at Jake, her finger shaking. Arrest him. His dog's been terrorizing the neighborhood. I called you to fix this. She stomped her foot, her face turning red again. She didn't understand why the officer wasn't mad at Jake. She didn't get why he was talking to the trainers like they were buddies. The officer turned to her, one eyebrow going up. He didn't look mad or in a hurry. He looked at Karen like she'd said something silly. Ma'am, he said, slow and clear, that's no ordinary dog. And Jake here? He's not just some guy with a pet. He crossed his arms and stepped back, letting the trainers take over. The trainers moved forward. The man, the one with short black hair, reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and shiny. It was a badge. He held it up so Karen could see it. The sun glinted off the metal, making it sparkle. K9 Unit, Special Operations, he said, his voice serious but not loud. Max is in training for search and rescue. Jake's been working with us for months. Karen's face froze. Her eyes got big, then small, then big again. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. What? She stammered. K9? Him. She pointed at Jake, her hand shaking even more now. It was like she couldn't believe her ears. She turned to Max, who was sitting by the trainer, his tail wagging. Then she looked back at Jake, her mouth hanging open. You, she said, like Jake had just grown two heads right in front of her. Jake didn't stay quiet anymore. He stepped closer, off the porch and onto the grass. His easy grin was gone now. His face was serious, but his eyes were bright. Yeah, Karen, he said, his voice steady. Max isn't a menace. He's a hero in the making. And those barks? That's him learning to save lives. Maybe you should have asked before you dialed 911. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His words hit hard all on their own. Karen's face went pale, like all the color drained out of it. She took a tiny step back, her clipboard slipping a little under her arm. She didn't know what to say. She'd thought Max was just a loud, wild dog. She'd thought Jake was just a lazy guy who didn't care about her rules. But now she saw the truth, and it was big. Bigger than anything she'd ever guessed. The trainer with the ponytail stepped up next to the man. She smiled at Max, then at Jake. He's doing great, she said. Max is smart. He's learning fast. Soon he'll be out there finding people who are lost or hurt. She patted Max's head, and he barked once, a happy bark, not a wild one. The officer nodded again, like he was proud too. Karen shook her head, slow at first, then faster. No, she mumbled. No, that can't be right. She looked at the badge, then at Max, then at Jake. Her brain was spinning. She'd called the police to get rid of Max. She'd wanted Jake to feel small. But now the police were here, and they weren't mad at Jake. They were on his side. And Max? He wasn't a problem. He was special. Neighbors were watching now, their heads poking out of windows and doors. Kids on bikes stopped riding and stared. They heard the trainer say K9 unit and search and rescue. They saw the officer shake Jake's hand. Whispers started buzzing through the air. Max is a hero dog, one kid said. Jake's training him, said another. Everyone was surprised, but they were smiling too. Everyone except Karen. Jake looked at her, his hands in his pockets now. Max barks a lot because he's practicing, he said. He's learning to listen, to find things, to help people. That's why the trainers are here. That's why the police know me. I've been doing this for months, Karen. You just didn't know. Karen's mouth closed, then opened again. She wanted to argue, but no words came out. She'd been so sure she was right. She'd been so sure Jake was wrong. But now the truth was standing right in front of her, and she couldn't fight it. Max wasn't a menace. He was a dog with a big job. And Jake wasn't just her annoying neighbor. He was part of something important. The officer tipped his hat a little. Good work, Miller, he said to Jake. Then he looked at Karen. Next time, maybe talk first, huh? He didn't wait for her to answer. He walked back to his car, ready to leave. The trainers started packing up their bags, giving Max one last pat. Karen stood there, her clipboard hanging loose now. She didn't smirk anymore. She didn't yell. She just stared, her face all mixed up, mad, confused, and a little embarrassed. The big reveal had hit her hard. Jake wasn't in trouble. Max wasn't going anywhere. And her perfect plan? It was falling apart right in front of everyone. This was at the moment everything changed. Karen thought she'd won, but she'd lost. Jake's secret was out, and it was awesome. Max was a hero dog, and Jake was helping him get there. The neighborhood would never look at them the same way again. The police officer turned to Karen, his face serious. He didn't look happy with her. Ma'am, he said, his voice deep and stern, false 911 calls waste our time. Next time, talk to your neighbor before you make a scene. He pointed at Jake, then tipped his hat a little nod to say goodbye. Then he walked back to his patrol car, his boots crunching on the gravel. He got in, started the engine, and drove away, the flashing lights fading down the street. Karen just stood there, frozen. She didn't know what to say. Her mouth opened a little, but no words came out. Her clipboard, the one she always held like a weapon, hung loose in her hand, dangling by her side. She looked small now, not big and bossy like before. The trainers were done too. They gave Max one last pat on the head, his tail wagging like crazy. See you soon, buddy, the woman with the ponytail said, smiling. They packed their bags into the black SUV, climbed in, and drove off, leaving a little cloud of dust behind. Neighbors were watching everything. Heads poked out of windows, and kids stood by their bikes, staring. They whispered to each other, their voices soft but excited. Did you hear that? One said. Max is a hero dog, said another. Karen got it wrong. They giggled and pointed, watching her stand there all alone. For once, Karen didn't have a comeback. She didn't yell or wave her clipboard. She didn't tell anyone what to do. She just looked, lost. Jake bent down low, his knees touching the grass. He scratched Max behind the ears, right where the dog liked it best. Max's big tongue flopped out, and he barked once a happy bark. Good boy, Jake said softly, his voice warm and kind. He rubbed Max's furry head, and the dog leaned into him, wagging his tail so hard it thumped the ground. Then Jake looked up at Karen. She was still standing there, her face all grumpy and confused. If Max bothers you again, Jake said, standing up now, just let me know. We'll figure it out. No need for all this drama. His voice was nice, not mad. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted peace. He brushed some dirt off his pants and smiled a little, not a big grin, just a small one. He was being friendly, even after everything Karen had done. Karen didn't smile back. She muttered something under her breath, words too quiet to hear. Her shoulders slumped, and she turned around slow, like her feet were heavy. She shuffled back to her house across the street, her shoes dragging on the sidewalk. She didn't look back. She didn't shout or glare. She just went inside and shut the door. Her reign as HOA queen, the boss of Maple Grove, didn't feel so strong anymore. Everyone could see it. She'd tried to win, but she'd lost big time. The yard got quiet again. Max ran over to his ball, picked it up, and dropped it at Jake's feet. Jake laughed and tossed it, watching Max chase it with a happy bark. The neighbors went back inside or rode off on their bikes. The excitement was over, but the story wasn't. Karen had learned something: she couldn't boss everyone around. And Jake? He'd shown her that Max was more than just noise. Justice was served, nice and simple. And just like that, everything flipped upside down. Jake, the quiet guy with the loud dog, wasn't who everyone thought he was. People looked at him and saw a regular guy, maybe even a troublemaker because of Max's barking. But they were wrong. He turned out to be the one everyone underestimated. Funny how things work, right? You think you know someone or some pup, but then they surprise you. Sometimes, the ones you think are a problem are really the ones ready to save the day. Max wasn't just a noisy dog. He was training to be a hero, helping people who were lost or hurt. And Jake? He wasn't lazy or careless. He was working hard to make Max the best he could be. Karen thought she had it all figured out, but she didn't. She judged them too fast, and it made her look silly in the end. So, what's the big lesson here? Maybe it's this: don't judge too quick. You might see someone or even a dog and think you know their story. But you don't. Not really. There could be something amazing hiding right in front of you, like a hero in a backyard. Next time you meet someone new, or hear a bark that's a little loud, take a second to wonder. What if they're special? What if they're doing something big? Thanks for sticking with me, friends. I had fun telling you about Jake and Max. What did you think of them? Did you like how they surprised Karen? Drop a comment and tell me. Oh, and if you've got a nosy neighbor story, like someone who's always peeking or complaining, I'd love to hear it. Maybe your story has a hero hiding in it too. See you next time.